Hello everyone, myself Madhav. In this session, I'll be teaching you about polygenic inheritance with respect to the skin color in human beings. So before starting that, let me write the heading name. It is polygenic inheritance So what is this polygenic inheritance? This polygenic inheritance, we also call it as a quantitative trait. We call this polygenic inheritance as quantitative inheritance. Yes, we also call that as quantitative inheritance. So what is the main thing here in the polygenic inheritance is, here the number of characters is, the character is maintained by the number of dominant genes. As I have already told, this particular polygenic inheritance mainly works on the quantity of the genes and not the quality of the genes. So to put it in a very short form, number of dominant genes is responsible for the expression of character. I hope it is clear to all of you now. So polygenic inheritance is also called as quantitative inheritance, and this particular quantitative inheritance in this character is mainly maintained by the number of dominant genes. So the best example for this polygenic inheritance in this video that I'll be explaining about skin color in human beings. This skin color in human beings, it is actually controlled by skin color in human beings. It is controlled by 3 genes. So in the kernel color in wheat, we had only 2 genes, but in the skin color in human beings, there are 3 genes which is controlling the skin color. So what are those 3 genes? A, B and C. A, B and C are the genes. If all the genes are there, that is capital A, capital B and small c, this has the maximum melanin content. This has the maximum melanin content is released when all the genes are present in its homozygous state, and this will be one of the extreme color, and which is characterized by the black color. And there is one more, small a, that is recessive A, recessive B and recessive B, recessive C. This has no melanin pigmentation. So this has no melanin pigmentation, and this kind of human beings, we call it as albino. One is black, which is releasing the maximum melanin content where all the dominant genes are present, and one, it is all the recessive genes and there is no melanin pigmentation at all, and that kind of human beings we call it as albino. And this will also be one of the extreme conditions that we have to understand. Now what is the main thing? See, here there are 6 dominant genes and here there are 6 recessive genes, and it is quite clear. Now in the middle one we call it as intermediate, and where there is one dominant allele and one recessive allele, dominant allele of B, dominant allele of small b, recessive allele of small b, dominant allele of C and recessive allele of C. This has some intermediate color where we call this kind of organisms or human beings as mulattoes. So this is the intermediate color where there are 3 dominant and 3 recessive genes. I hope it is clear to all of you now. In skin color in human beings, it is mainly regulated by 3 genes. It is A, B and C. If all the dominant genes are present, it is producing the maximum melanin content, that is black. If there is no dominant allele, it is the extreme condition again where there is no melanin pigmentation, and that kind of human beings are called as albino. And there are 3 dominant genes and 3 recessive genes, which we call it as an intermediate character, and we call it as mulattoes. I hope it is clear now. We started with 6 dominant gene and we ended up to the 0 dominant genes. Now what is that? We have to write a key. What is that key? I am writing it here. If there are 6 dominant genes, we call it as black. And if there are 5 dominant genes and 1 recessive gene, we call it as very dark. And if there are 4 dominant genes and 2 recessive genes, we call it as dark. And if there are 3 dominant genes and 3 recessive genes, what do we call it as? We call it as an intermediate character, that is mulattoes. This is the key. And 2 dominant genes, if 2 dominant genes are there, we call it as fair. And if one dominant gene is there, we call it as very fair. And if there are 0 dominant genes, we call it as albino. Yes, I hope it is clear now. 6 dominant genes to 0 dominant genes. So in turn, this skin color in human beings has 6 different races. One, it is black, very dark, dark, mulattoes, fair, very fair, and albino, where there is no dominant genes in the albino and where there is no recessive genes in the black color. I hope it is clear till now. And after that, we have to start the crossing. So when I start the crossing, I'll always cross dominant. I'll always cross dominant into recessive. So when dominant parent, it is black, and the recessive parent, it is albino. Now we have to write the genotype of that parent. So genotype of black is AA, BB and CC, where all the genes are dominant. And for albino, it is small a, small b, and small c. After this, we have to take the gametes. A, B, C circled, and small a, small b, small c circle. And when I fuse this, I'll get a composition as dominant A, recessive A, dominant B, recessive B, dominant C, recessive C. And this one, I'm calling it as the F1 progeny, that is first filial progeny, where it is exhibiting the intermediate color, which we also call it as, let me write it in some other color so that it will be easier to understand. We call it as mulattoes, where they have the intermediate color, and there are 3 dominant and 3 recessive genes. I hope it is clear now. 3 dominant genes and 3 recessive genes, intermediate, which we also call it as mulattoes. Now, what is that thing? We have to do the self crossing, or we have to do the process of selfing. Yes, capital A small a, capital B small c, capital C small c, sorry, capital A small a, capital B small b, capital C small c into the same thing. Selfing is nothing but the self crossing. Yes, now we have to take the gametes. How do we take a gametes if there are 3 genes? Please make a note of it. If there are 3 genes, I'll write it here. Yes, if there are 3 pairs of genes, then the number of gametes will be 8 gametes. There will be 8 gametes produced. Now, to one set I will write, only for this set I will write the gametes, and this set is the same gamete. No, anyway, will not write it, will write it only for this. How to write the gametes for this thing? First, you write all the dominant allele, capital A, capital B, capital C. Next, you write capital A, capital B, and small letter C. Then you write capital A, capital C, and small b. Next, small letter A, capital B, and capital C. I hope it is clear now. After this, take dominant allele of A and recessive allele of BC. Take recessive allele of A and C, then the dominant allele of B, and B is the recessive allele and C will be the dominant allele, and here the last one, it is everything is recessive. So these are the gametes, and you have to make sure that you will circle it. Yes, and again we'll write it. This is also of the same type. For the convenience, we'll write it. I am repeating it for one more time. All the capital letters or all the dominant allele. Next, you write the dominant allele of A, B, and the recessive allele of C. And in the next one, take the dominant allele of A and C, then the small recessive allele of B, and recessive allele of A, and BC will be the dominant allele. Here A will be the dominant allele, BC will be the recessive allele. Here I am taking two dominant alleles, here I am taking only one dominant allele, and A dominant allele of only B, and then the dominant allele of C, and the remaining will be the recessive allele. And next it is small letter A, small letter B, and small letter C, which is all the recessive alleles. Now there are 8 gametes here, there are 8 gametes here. 8 8s are 64. We have to put 64 boxes and do the Punnett square. So let us try that along with the 64 boxes. Before that, Punnett square is the concept of this, is a main concept which was explained by a scientist called as Reginald C. Punnett. And the important point, again, this skin color in human beings was explained by a scientist called as David Port. He is the scientist who it is Davenport. It is Davenport explained this skin color in human beings is actually a polygenic inheritance. Now the main we have to do is Punnett square. There are 8 gametes on each side, so 8 8s are 64. So let me erase all these things and let me keep this as a key. Yes, I'll erase all these things because our Punnett square will be very big. Yes, I'll put it on this side of the board, and let me repeat the key for one more time. I'll write the key here. Yes, if there are 6 dominant genes, we call it as black. I'm writing this as the key so that we'll get the easier Punnett square. 5 dominant gene, it is very dark. 4 dominant gene, it is dark. And 3 dominant genes, it is mulattoes or the intermediate character. 2 dominant genes, fair. 1 dominant gene, very fair. And 0 dominant genes, we call it as albino. Yes. Now we have to start with the Punnett square. As I've already told, the Punnett square should include 8 boxes, 64 boxes. And now we have to write the gametes. I will put this gametes in some other color. Yeah. First one, it had all the 3 dominant genes A, B, C. Second one, only A and B is dominant, C is recessive. Next, A and C is dominant, B is recessive, and A is recessive, B and C is dominant. Next, 4 gametes are done. After that, A is dominant, B, C is recessive, A is recessive, B is dominant, and C is recessive again. A and B is recessive, C is dominant, and here all the 3 are recessive. And the same thing I have to repeat it here as well. A, B, C, all the capital. A, B is capital, and C is recessive. A, C is capital, B is recessive. A is small letter, B and C is capital. A is capital, B, C is recessive, and A, this will be the next one, and A, B, here C will be dominant, and here all the 3 will be recessive. Now what we have to do, we have to fill the entire 64 boxes, but before that I'll teach you a trick. We'll solve 2 of them. Yes, let me write it in white one. Yeah. Capital A, capital A, capital B, capital B, capital C, capital C. So we'll take this. Capital A, capital A, capital B, capital B, capital C, small letter C. Capital A, capital A, capital B, capital B, capital C, small letter C. And here it is the extreme condition: small a, small b, and small c, small c. Now, if I start filling like this for all the 64 boxes, it would take another 30 minutes to fill all the boxes. So I'll teach you a shortcut, and this shortcut is only applicable for this polygenic inheritance, only for this example. I'm repeating it again. This kind of shortcut is not applicable to any Mendelian cross, and it is only applicable for this example of polygenic inheritance. So I don't want you people to try this kind of shortcut for all the other dihybrid and monohybrid crosses, because it will give different ratios. This shortcut is only applicable for this method. Now, how to write that shortcut? See, as I've already told, polygenic inheritance will mainly concentrate on the number of dominant genes. So in each box, if I write the number of dominant genes, I think it is more than sufficient for me to explain the ratios instead of writing or filling all the boxes like that. So let me write the number of dominant genes. Yes, here there are 6 dominant genes. Here there are 3 plus 2. Here it is 5 dominant genes. Here it is 3 plus 2, 5 dominant genes. Again 3 plus 2, 5 dominant genes. Here 3, here 1. 4 dominant genes. Here 4 dominant genes. 4 dominant genes. And here it is 3 dominant genes. I hope you are understanding. If you have not understood, we'll fill one more line. You will get an idea. Here there are 2 dominant genes. Here there are 3 dominant genes. So in total it is 5 dominant genes. 2 plus 2, 4 dominant genes. 2 plus 2, 4 dominant genes. Here 2 dominant genes, 2 dominant genes. 4 dominant genes. 2 plus 1, 3 dominant genes. Here also 3 dominant genes. Here also 3 dominant genes. And here it is only 2 dominant genes, because here there is no dominant gene, and here it is only 2. We'll go to the next one. 2 dominant genes here, 3 here. So here it is 5 dominant genes. 2 plus 2, 4 dominant genes. 2 plus 2, 4 dominant genes. 4 dominant genes. And here it is 2. Here it is 1. 3 dominant genes. 3 dominant genes. 3 dominant genes. And here it is only 2 dominant genes. Hope you people are understanding it. We'll fill all the boxes like that. Here it is 2 plus 3, 5 dominant genes. We'll fill it like this: 1 dominant gene plus 3, 4, and 1 plus 3, 4 dominant genes. 1 plus 3, 4 dominant genes. 0 plus 3, 3 dominant genes. Yes, here it is 2 dominant genes. Here there are 2, 4 dominant genes, and 1 plus 3, 3 dominant, 1 plus 2, 2 dominant, 3 dominant genes. Here it is 1, there it is 2, 3 dominant genes. 1 plus 2, 3 dominant genes, and here 0 plus 2, two dominant genes. I hope you people are understanding this. Let me fill this. Here there are two, here there is two. So 4 dominant genes, 2 plus 2, 4 dominant genes, 2 plus 1, 3 dominant genes, 2 plus 1, 3 dominant genes, here also 3 dominant genes, and here it is 2, here it is 0. So it is 2 dominant genes. And after that, 1 dominant gene, 2. So 3 dominant genes, 1 plus 2, yes. Here also 3 dominant genes, here it is 2 dominant genes, 2 dominant genes, 2 dominant genes and 1 dominant gene, because here is no recessive dominant allele, here is only 1. Here 1 plus 2, 3 dominant, 3 dominant again, 1 plus 1, 2 dominant, 2 dominant, 2 dominant, and here it is only 1 dominant. Here also it is 1 plus 2, 3 dominant genes, 1 plus 2, 1 plus 2 it is 3 dominant again, 1 plus 1 it is 2, here also it is 2, here also it is 2, and here it is 1 dominant. Here there are no dominant genes, you should write just 2. 2 dominant genes, 2 dominant, 1 dominant, and here also 1 dominant, here also it is 1 dominant, and here it is 0 dominant. Yes, now we have completely filled this character, and we have to consider the ratio. So let me write the ratio in different color. Yes, I put the ratios here. Yes, we'll consider 6 dominant genes. In the blocks, how many 6 dominant genes are there? There is only 1. So I am writing it like 0, 1. Yes, I'll put a star mark. And how many 0 dominant genes are there? There is only 1 0 dominant gene. So I am putting a star mark which is indicating the completed. So here it is 1. Before writing the phenotypic ratio, you should please check whether the given written things are correct or not, and then you have to go with the phenotypic ratio. Next, we'll check with the 5 dark genes. How many 5 dominant genes are there? Yes, let me take an orange color. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Yes, there are 6 5 dominant genes, so I'm writing it as 6. Sorry, we'll go with the 4 dominant genes. We start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. This is looking like 0. It is D. So how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So there are 15 4 dominant genes. Next we have to go for the 3 dominant genes. We will write it in, yes, 3 dominant genes we should count now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 and 20. So there are 23 dominant genes. I hope it is clear now. Next we have to count the 2 dominant genes, and we'll start counting the 2 dominant genes. We'll start from here. Let me use yellow only. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15. As you can see, the ratio is repeating, and 1 dominant gene we have to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 1 dominant genes are there. Yes, I hope it is clear now. So what are the ratios that we have to write now? I'll put it here. Yes, the phenotypic ratio will be 1:6:15:20:15:6:1. So this is the ratio. Let me write it neatly. Here it is. Yes, we should write the phenotypic ratio now. We'll write it. We'll write the phenotypic ratio. The phenotypic ratio will have 6 different phenotypes of numbering. 1:6:15:15:6:1. I think we have explained it here as where you can see the maximum number of number in the given phenotypes, it is at the 20. So when we plot a graph for this, say, and I'm plotting a graph for this graph will be like this. To the extreme there is 1 and 1. This is the extreme dark and this is the albino, and in the middle there is 20, and here there are 15 and 15 here, and here it is 6 and here it is 6, and the graph is very much compulsory, and this kind of graph we call it as bell shaped graph. Bell shaped graph. Now, as in the kernel color in wheat, there were only 2 genes for the expression. But in skin color, there are 3 genes. As the number of genes is increasing, the number of phenotypes will also increase. So this is about the skin color in human beings. I hope you have understood this concept clearly. Thank you.